Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Evil Within, the assignment DLC, KURAYAMI difficulty video walkthrough, I think it's called. Doing a little research into it, I believe it is Japanese for darkness, and you'll understand why when we get into it. Suffice to say, this is Chapter 1, it is an oath, and we are playing as Nicole Kidman, as I call her, which is not her name, but I call her that anyway. And this is the first piece of DLC for The Evil Within, a game that I had a ton of fun with back when it came out, and a game that I've been eagerly anticipating what they're going to do with it, and this is the first installment, and personally, I think they've done a really good job with it. I think it's very different to what I was expecting, and it's not perhaps the direction I would have took myself, but it's definitely worth looking at. And the first thing I have to do to lay people at rest is the new difficulty here is not Akumu mode, guys. It is nothing like it. So if you're still shivering and having trepidations over the hell that was that incredibly difficult difficulty, this does not have that. You will only shoot enemies in one sequence of this DLC, and it is a scripted shooting sequence where you have unlimited ammunition. For the rest of it, you're going to be navigating, there's going to be a heavy emphasis on atmosphere and narrative, and then there's going to be stealth mechanics, hide-and-seek gameplay, and some shifts to mechanisms that enable the stealth kills to work a little bit differently. That aside, it's pretty interesting stuff. So this is the first of the 2 chapters that you get in the DLC. The DLC cost around £7 to £8 in my money, which I would say it's worth it. I got about 3.5 hours worth of enjoyment out of my first playthrough, and I'm just recording it now. I've done 1 chapter, I haven't done chapter 2, chapter 2 is still yet to come, but I wanted to get this out as quickly as possible, just to kind of put people's assumptions at bay, because I know a lot of folks are going to be worrying that this is going to be incredibly difficult, and it's not. So, I have seen no differences between survival difficulty, which is the default one, and it doesn't let you select anything other when you first play it, and this difficulty you're watching now. There is one difference. Oh, and there's a lot of expositional moments that I'm going to trim out, and you're going to see it in a moment. There it was. So, right now is the beginning of this difficulty. There is a torch mechanic in the DLC, where Kidman gets access to a torch, and she can use it to, illuminate her environment. And her environment, previously, was decently lit. It was lit with a very compositional eye to make it cinematic, to make it tense, to make it suspenseful, and that's what horror lighting does. Well, what they've done here is they've blanketed everything in shadow. So a game that already restricts your vision with those black bars on the top and bottom is now draped in a veil of darkness, and the only way to see is to use your torch. And the first thing you'll be aware of is the enemies that are on the ground on this DLC do this thing where they grab Nicole Kidman, and you have to kick them off, which is kind of annoying, and you're going to see me dodge these bodies as best I can. But the thing with them is they can be quite tricky to see because the game is really, really dark, and because your torch has suddenly become so important, hopefully I'm going to have it on for the majority of this, because when you turn it off you can't see anything. And there are moments in the game where you can't see anything when you have it on, which is kind of bizarre. But pushing forward, this is an area that will threaten you not even in the slightest. You are not in danger here, it is just the game building the suspense, bringing on the Hitchcockian bomb under the table, and you're fearing the detonation that never comes. So, going to the vent, listen to the horrific noises that are going to be plaguing this entire playthrough, and you're going to be introduced to the first of the creatures, which is new to the DLC. I am not going to be looking through the vents or giving you a cinematic experience, because this isn't a playthrough, guys, this is a walkthrough. I'm here to help people struggling, and hopefully that's what this does. So once it's finished in its stylish high heels, it's going to walk away. That creature is kind of the new Ruvik in this particular piece of content. It's going to stalk around, and if it sees you, it's going to close the distance to you, and it's going to instantly kill you. However, it's not as bad as Ruvik, because Ruvik could teleport and it can't, and you never have a penultimate encounter with it. I assume they're saving it for the second piece of DLC, entitled The Consequence, but we are going to bump into it a few times, and I have some pretty convincing ways of making sure you don't die. One of them involves me getting in a bit of a a tough spot, but it goes to show just how flexible this difficulty is. So, right there, I didn't have to whistle, that guy saw something, and he moved to where I just was, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to hit this door. If it doesn't work that way for you, try whistling, and then make sure he doesn't see you. You can tell when he sees you if you have the audio on, because there are very distinct audio cues. On survival, you do get a heads-up display, which tells you if they're alert to you, or if they just kind of can see you and you should move, but you will not get those on KURAYAMI, because they've taken them away. And it's kind of funny, actually, the way the darkness works on this. You would think that the game being draped, you know, in complete gloom would make it scarier. It doesn't. At all, because it's almost like a slight on your sense. I find it's tricky to navigate, so I'm not afraid of the things that are lurking there that threaten me, because I'm already being threatened by my lack of visibility to do just anything in the game. So instead of seeing it as something that builds dread and scares me, I just kind of see it as an inconvenience, and I'm going to toss a bottle in that room. She throws it very strangely, so make sure you're not near cover or she'll smash it into cover and you'll die. That happened to me twice on my first playthrough. Once that's done, sneak over to this vent. A couple of the loading bars here, or the doorways that take you to another area, which is probably a more direct way of saying it, the kind of baited. It looks like you can just get to a door and skip a room, and then you'll have to do something specific like tap a button or turn a crank, and of course if you do that when enemies are close, they're going to kill you. But this dude runs past in a rather cinematic moment to scare you. Pay it no notion, touch that. This room's going to open up. As you can see, it's pretty dark, so hopefully you were paying attention on your first playthrough, because I know I bloody wasn't. But hit the phone, it's going to then lure the haunted into this next room, and we're going to skirt all the way out, all the way across, and we're going to seal it in once I've figured out where the hell the door is, because the cutscene kind of disorientated me. So the haunted's definitely in that room. I'm going to run now, and I'm going to touch the wall button. It's going to seal it in, and it's one less enemy we have to attend to for the next sequence, which means that these corridors are now safe, because that dude is not walking around. You will hear lots of banging from him, but he'll never get out. And if he can get out, I've never experienced it, and I've locked a few dudes in. If it's the first time you've done that, you'll get a trophy or an achievement, which, you know, nice 15G or probably a bronze. But a lot of these rather well-maintained ventilation shafts are going to be guiding us through most of this content, especially in the first episode. And then once you're in here, bit of a cheap jump scare there, but it's just a noise and a sequence that tells you that the way you came in is now blocked. And as soon as you pick up that card, get in the cupboard. Now I'm in the closet too. So, once you're in here, you can't see a damn thing. This is this difficulty in a nutshell. The first haunted is going to come in with his eyes, and then you're going to be introduced to the rather stellar lighting effects, considering that this is Xbox 360. And this is a great looking game, folks, when I come back to it. The frame rate, of course, is not as great as it could be. And I think it's still 30 frames on next gen. I think it's only PC where you can get it at 60. But this creature that's looking for Leslie, that I call the lighthouse monster, because it's got this giant light on its face, and it reminds me of... Is it Billy Zane? It's not Billy Zane, that's dude from Titanic. Who was the guy from Alan Wake who dressed up as a Big Daddy? It reminds me of him. It's very Bioshocky. But do not follow the creature, go down this corridor instead. The creature just went into the room where I tossed the bottle, so that's a dead end, of course. Once you're down here, there's going to be another wall switch that you have to hit. It's going to get you through the doors, and it's going to get you into a checkpoint. And I've got to give Tango some credit here, because I think that this DLC's pacing is really nice. There is a lot of times where they could have thrown enemies at you, they could have thrown, you know, situations at you where you were killing tons of stuff, and they didn't. There's a very graceful and deft hand that is guiding your movements through this, and I think it was, my first playthrough, it was fantastic. Like, this mission maybe took me an hour and a half, because I didn't know what was coming, and I was crouching, and I was taking it all in. It was very atmospheric. On my recording run just then, I think I did this in about 20 minutes. You know, something like that, maybe a half an hour. So it just goes to show, when you know what's happening, the illusion's destroyed. But on that first playthrough, there is some just fantastic gameplay moments, but I do think it'll suffer on repeat plays, because you realise just how empty a lot of the threats are, and it's your imagination that's the true, you know, peril. But once you hit that computer, it's going to spawn the lighthouse dude. who's wearing high heels, so it's not a dude at all unless it's cross-dressing. And it's wearing suspenders too. It's got the whole, like, garter in there. So when she drops in, she walks over here and she looks behind the two desks. Sometimes she doesn't look behind both of them, and what you want to do, as soon as you see her turn towards you, walk past her. Doesn't matter if you crouch, doesn't matter if you're standing. The only problem here is if she sees you with the light. You are so safer than you think you are in these sequences. As long as you don't get hit by the light, you're perfect. And it seems she's immune to sound, so you can't, unless you bump into her, you're probably going to be okay. But that is introducing you to the mechanic of using the torch to show you things that are invisible, and it's going to be helpful for finding certain collectibles, opening doors, and finding bits of information of the game's lore. And I find this very ironic, because I like to think that this was designed when the main game was, which was hopefully, I think so, before Resident Evil Revelations 2. However, in Revelations 2, from the gameplay I've been watching, there's a lot of Evil Within references in there, you know, lots of influences. A lot of the gameplay looks like it's inspired by this game in certain ways, which it might not be, but it damn sure looks that way. And they even have a mechanic where there's a character who uses a torch to stun people, Alan Wake style, and she also uses it to unveil hidden goodies in the environment. So it's quite almost serendipitous that these two projects, by completely different teams, have come together and had these similar elements in them. And it makes me wonder if they knew, or if there was any awareness of that, or if it's just one of those happy accidents.
I gotta get to him before anything else does.
But I do think this difficulty is kind of bullshit, because it makes a really interesting looking place with really great lighting, really atmospheric design. It gets rid of that, you know. It's like throwing fog in something. It completely nullifies what was there before. Like, there's a moment here where their dude sneaks up on you when you're saving. Can you see him barely then? You barely saw the dude. It's a con. He can't do anything. It's not a trap. He disappears when you come out of the sequence. But on the first time, I think I sat stroking that cat for about a minute, hoping that he'd leave because I didn't know what was going on. But that's just not the case, because you can hardly see anything. There's a random flickering Brad Pitt. Nice little Fight Club moment of Joseph turning up. And do not trust any of the doors, folks. There's a couple of sequences later on where I tried to completely rush past some enemies and I got burned because they would tap it like an idiot for 5 seconds and get mauled. Which, you know, technology in these games, never on your side. But here is another stealth section with 2 haunted. Behind you there's some artwork that if you shine your torch on, it's got numbers on them, which I'm not too sure about. I think it's to do with a safe I haven't found in this area. I also found a snail in the Tango software logo snail in a vent, and I shined my torch on it and it had like an orgasm and turned into something strange. It was pretty funny. But toss the bottle in that room, seal him in just like you did before. Perfect strategy of getting rid of him. Now there's only one guy, and I don't know if it's the generous lighting or just his awareness, but he cannot see you if you're at this distance when you cross between these 2 pieces of cover. I'm kind of surprised this game doesn't have like a, you know, cover-to-cover moving mechanic, but it is pretty old school in a lot of its ways. And it also does a couple of dishonest things as well. Anybody who's been playing Evil Within recently, I mean, I haven't touched it for a few months now, but I played that game a lot and I enjoyed it. There's a mechanic in there with an axe, where you put the axe on, you hold the left trigger and you can swing it, or you use the melee button and you can swing it. And it's ingrained into my brain, that's how I work. This DLC changes that. The axe does not do that. And I was testing different controllers, thinking my analogs and stuff weren't working when I was trying to... Sorry, my D-pad, when I was trying to pick the axe, because I couldn't equip it. I'm throwing the bottle here to get him away from the door. That lets us get through without incident. Nice and simple stuff, pretty easy. But it turns out, the axe gives her the capacity to stealth kill. Without it, she can't stealth kill, so do not go behind any haunted expecting to stab them in the head, because she just doesn't have the stomach for it, apparently, or the weapons to deliver it. Instead, your stealth kills will come at a price, and there's only really one area of the game where you need to do them, and that's in a boss fight coming up. And there is an achievement there for not touching these electrical devices, and I did that on my first playthrough, and I don't know if the devices will make that any simpler, but I'm very curious to see how it plays out on this difficulty, because I did it my first time, but it was a 10-minute tense showdown with that dude, and I have no idea if the darkness is going to make that any more difficult, because it reminded me of The Last of Us when you're going up against that cannibal dude, only not quite as, shall we say, tense and scary because he killed you really fast, and Joseph never got to me even though he had a gun, which seems a bit strange. But moving on swiftly. The biggest threat in some of these areas is simple navigation, because there's lips and there's those hospital sheets that are translucent that clip on you. All kinds of weird shit. Like, it's funny how different a game can look when they turn the lights off, and I'm curious to see how many people actually like this as a difficulty, because so far it's just inconvenience, really. But one of the things I didn't realise here, folks, you have to touch that recording I just opened up, and once you touch it, it's going to show two ghosts afterwards. It's a scripted sequence, I believe. And I've gone all the way back here to see if I can go through that door, and of course the door doesn't let me in because I've gone the wrong way. So just bear with me, folks. Kind of difficult to remember some of this stuff when you've done it so quickly and you've got a shit memory like me. But I come back over here assuming that I have to touch this, and of course that is the trigger for this cutscene when I turn around. So you turn around, the hologram is there. I've trimmed the hologram out for you folks to try and make up for the walking around a little bit, and then we can push onwards. But once again, a testament to the atmosphere here. There are a lot of moments where the room itself is where the dread lies, because you just don't know. You know, you don't know what's going to come, and after that first playthrough, all of that is lost, so enjoy it, and I know I did. But here is a projector, which is going to give us a little bit more of the exposition. So far, the exposition in this has been quite interesting. It seems like they're setting it up to be a lot like Resident Evil, where the Mobius company is going to be an umbrella, and STEM wasn't just an isolated case in the Beacon Hospital. STEM is a product that they've been working on for a very long time, and it is well funded. There are numerous sites, and it just so happens that the one at Beacon had Ruvik to make it work. So the potential for sequels with this game is insane, but I hope they resist that, because I would rather have less games that are all great than have more games that get tepid over time. And when you think about the potential for this game as well, it is pretty baffling. Like, there is no continuity in the story. There is absolutely no logical way to, you don't have to apply logic to any of it. You don't have to explain why 1 minute you're in a hospital, the next you're in, a random village or a random church or some crazy catacombs. You don't have to explain it because you're in a bloody brain machine. You're in the encephalon of a dream, and that's all the explanation you need. So they have the flexibility to do anything, literally anything. They could have the ballroom scene from Beauty and the Beast with a bunch of phantom masquerading partners in pirouetting dance circles, and they wouldn't have to explain it. And then the next level could have been, like Battleship Grey on an aircraft carrier. Doesn't even have to make sense, and with that comes a massive amount of flexibility and creativity. So, I think Psycho Break has a future. It's just, will it be milked till its tits are swollen, or will it be gracefully done and iterated upon intelligently? I guess we'll have to see. But as soon as you've scanned all 3 of those images, this door's going to be bumped open. I didn't actually know if you had to hide at this point, but I just did what I did my first playthrough. As soon as the lights went out, I thought Lighthouse Face was coming. Turns out she wasn't. The door just gets kicked open, and then you're free to walk through it. But there's an interesting mechanic on this. Do you see how it says lure enemy? She whistles, and the enemy comes directly to where you are, where you've whistled, and you can of course use it to circumvent some problems. I never really used it at all in my first playthrough. I tried it on the first dude I came across, and he came to my position way quicker than I expected, and I ended up getting spotted anyway. So in future, I just kind of did without. I'd be curious to see if there's any true design for it, or any great way of using it in this, but so far I just haven't seen the necessity for it. And I do believe the first chapter is the tougher one. Chapter 2 was kind of quick. There was a couple of pretty risky moments, but I think I've got some good strategies. And the great news is the strategies are completely replaying in this difficulty because nothing's changed. Enemy placement isn't different, their awareness isn't higher. it seems, for all intents and purposes, exactly like the survival mode that I played. So, you're either reveling in that fact or you're lamenting it, but either way, it's a lot of fun. And today is the 10th of March, it's just come out. For some reason, Hotline Miami 2 won't let me download it. It keeps telling me, this will be available on the 10th. No shit, you stupid machine. Just because you think America rules the fucking world with time doesn't mean it's true for other people in different countries. Give it me now, son. So I assume it's locking people out who aren't on some kind of American time, which is bullshit, because that means that people in Australia will play that game a day late. And then you realise it's bullshit anyway, because people in Australia can't get the game unless they pirate it because they refuse to rate it. Because Australia is a funny country. But thank you very much for watching. I hope the video helped, and I will see you in the rest of this walkthrough. You take care now.